Spano and Black Attack rolls on here on the Sports Byline Broadcast Network. I'm Joe Spano. Let's go out to the guest line and bring in from SportsBettingExperts.com, Mr. Jim Murphy. Jim, welcome to the program. Great to talk to you this morning.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Let's dive right in. NBA and NHL playoffs are right around the corner. And let's talk about some strategies and some teams to watch and some teams that you may find maybe some potential good values and put you in a position to make some bucks.
Yeah, well, the way I usually like to do futures, I usually like to get involved with them earlier in the year when you can find some value on teams. Typically, I like to look for good teams that have kind of underachieved in the first part of the season. The NBA is interesting this year because there's really only three teams that are, at least the odds makers are giving a legitimate chance of winning, and that's Golden State, Cleveland, and San Antonio. And it's those three guys and everyone else in terms of the betting line. I think one of the things I would try to do is just look for some of the teams, the second or third-tier teams like the Clippers or even the Utah Jazz. As a native of Salt Lake City, that's a team I'd like to see do well. The Jazz are available at 40-1, and that's a real good team at a real good price at this stage of the year. It's kind of hard to see the one of the big three not winning the title, but if you have a team at 40-1, that sets up a lot of interesting hedge opportunities down the road.
And you talk about these hedge opportunities, and we'll get back to that in a second. But let's kind of double back. SportsBettingExperts.com. What makes your site unique in comparison to the proliferation of gaming and gambling expertise websites out there? What separates Jim Murphy and SportsBettingExperts.com from the herd?
Well, one thing I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been on both sides of the counter. I've consulted for offshore books. I've been a bettor. I've been a handicapper. I've done a radio show, and they kind of give me free reign with a lot of the content. And I spend a lot of the time doing odds on interesting and unusual events, anywhere from the Nobel Peace Prize to a couple of days ago I did odds on RuPaul's drag queen reality show. And I'll put our novelty odds and our non-sports odds up against anyone. And I've read a lot of the other sites, and there are some good ones out there. A lot of them are just basically keyword clickbait for SEO purposes. And ours isn't. Ours is some very entertaining, very unique, very insightful content. One thing I will point out, we did a lot of political coverage, and we had it pegged that the polling was incorrect in September. So I think that's pretty solid analysis.
Now, you talked about getting into some non-sports wagering and forecasting the odds and the lines and different non-sports things. Now, how much different is that expertise than, say, trying to set lines and trying to beat the numbers in sports wagering? Take us through that a little bit, because that sounds a little unique, a little unusual, and a little different.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you're just kind of coming up with probabilities and putting numbers to them. How you get the information is a little different. Obviously, we'll talk about RuPaul's drag queen show. Obviously, that's not really an area of my expertise, but there's plenty of people online who, that's really with any reality show, they're passionate about it. So you kind of go to secondhand analysis and, read what people think, as opposed to sports where you kind of go with more of a straight statistical approach. You kind of factor in a little bit of the public perception, but that's one of the things I really enjoy about sports betting experts is, like I said, they give me free reign, and I can kind of do a little more creative stuff. Really after 20 years of doing power ratings every day on sports, it's just kind of fun to have have a little variety at hand.
And moreover, one of the unique things about your site is you help gamblers find some of the best recommended sports books based on payout and odds and lines and everything else. And go into that a little bit, because the difference between a high-quality sports book and a low-quality sports book with margins as small as they are in gaming between winning and losing can be the difference between being profitable and being a loser.
Right, you're absolutely right, and that is something that I do have a lot of input in as far as the which sports books we recommend. Actually, I did all the reviews. They're not just boilerplate that the books send us. I looked at all the sites. I did all the reviews. In most cases, I'm very familiar with the books, and in the majority of the cases, the people that run them. It's kind of the thing where you kind of know who's going to pay you and who's not. The books that have been around for 15 years through thick and thin, those are the ones I kind of gravitate toward. But there are new books, good new books coming online all the time. And the U.S. player still doesn't have it as good as, say, the European player, but we're getting more options every month.
Well, and, it's interesting. The European player, and they do have a distinct advantage as far as the scope of the betting opportunities, the ease in which they get paid, and some of the other things. But, let's go into some industry trends. Is the market in the United States loosening up, and is it going to start replicating Europe a little more in that, there are a lot more bets you can make in Europe than you can make here in the United States? As an example, in Europe, they'll actually take bets on, and they have odds on things like professional wrestling, which, it's a real sport in the sense that the combat and the physicality is real. But the outcomes are choreographed. In the United States, it's a lot harder to find a book that will accept wagering on something like professional wrestling where the outcome is choreographed, because if you have somebody inside of, say, World Wrestling Entertainment who maybe is a writer or has an insight into the writer meetings, you'll know how they book the product. And I would think that would be a great risk to a sports book of getting cleaned out. So, take us through the differences between the European model and the American model as far as sports books, and dive into some of the trends we're starting to see today in sports gaming in this country.
I'm still not 10 years ago, I would have I've been a lot more bullish on where we would have been today than I am now. That's kind of I spent a lot of time in Las Vegas, and I've kind of given up on their sports betting marketplace. There's really not much incentive to improve it. The legacy casino companies are happy with the status quo, and they don't want to innovate. They don't want to make any changes. The changes are coming at the margins. There's a lot of books now that accept Bitcoin, which makes it a lot easier for U.S. players to get money back and forth. And we are getting a lot more variety in terms of bets. We're still way behind Europe. You can bet on anything from badminton to darts to the gender of Prince William's next kid. But we are getting more options in terms of U.S. players. I did a lot of media in the past few days on WrestleMania, which was really a pretty big betting event. There are a lot of books that take action on it. They don't take big bets on it. Usually it's like a $100, $200 limit. So they're kind of well aware of the potential of getting cleaned out by inside information, and they try to protect against it.
Now, I was going to say, in Europe, will they take bigger bets on? And I'm looking at your WrestleMania 33 article, and you actually went back and chronicled WrestleMania 1 within the article. That said, in Europe, will they take larger bets on WWE events and events like WrestleMania, despite that risk?
Not really. They're very well aware of the risk of insiders using their information to their advantage, and they do a good job protecting their bottom line. And WrestleMania, it's kind of like what a casual recreational player will do in the NFL. It's just fun to have a little extra interest in the product you're watching, and usually a couple $100 wager on that'll do it.
All right, so there's no chance of me cleaning up domestically or abroad because I know somebody on the writing team or on the booking committee at either the WWE or Impact Wrestling.
No, it's funny. Back, I guess about a decade or so ago, TNA was a couple of books were offering odds on the weekly TNA show, which was a pay-per-view at that point. And I'm not going to mention names, but a friend of mine was a fraternity brother with a kind of a mid-level TNA wrestler. And we kind of got the outcomes before the fact. And like I said, we weren't able to clean up, but it was an extra $50 here or there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I know quite a few people that write these products and book this. If I get some 411, I could be rich. That said, start of the Major League Baseball season is here, and And again, we're joined by Jim Murphy from SportsBettingExperts.com, and we're kind of going inside the numbers. And, before we run, we're going to really get some detail on the site. Again, what makes it so unique. Start of the Major League Baseball season is here. I've always been of the mindset that betting on Major League Baseball, if you have the stones to lay juice, is maybe the best way to make money in sports gaming. What say you about that, number one? And number two, what do you see as some good opportunities? Today's not a particularly good game because there's only one game on the slate.
Right.
But what do you see as some good opportunities in the early season in Major League Baseball?
Well, Major League Baseball, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he had a big parlay on yesterday's baseball card that he ended up pushing at the last minute as opposed to losing. And really the whole idea of early season baseball, as I was telling him, I still have nightmares about it. And it's just a very chaotic time of year. And if you pay really close attention to the product, and especially the pitching, you can find good value. In general, this stage of the year, I would be looking to go against the Cubs in Boston, not for any other reason than they're overvalued at this point. You kind of see that. The Cubs in Boston are overvalued every year. They're public teams. The public they've loved to bet the Cubs even when they weren't any good. And those are the teams I look to go against. I kind of like looking at some of the bottom feeders that might be making progress, like Atlanta, for example, or teams at that level. They may be making an incremental step up, and that's where you can kind of find value. These teams that everybody has written off prematurely. And you saw it with Houston a couple of years ago. They went from doormat to playoff contender in the span of about a year. And if you got ahead of that, which was really pretty easy to do, you had a good opportunity to not only win some games, but win them at good prices. And that's what I usually try to do during the early part of the Major League Baseball season.
Now, UFC 210 is right around the corner. Take us through this and what you're seeing from a betting and gaming perspective on UFC 210 as far as the numbers and the betting opportunities here.
It's funny, I really don't follow UFC close. For a while I was writing about UFC and boxing full-time, so I'm fairly knowledgeable about the sport. I really don't follow it closely for betting purposes anymore, and that's what I found interesting. I knew the Daniel Cormier-Anthony Johnson fight was the headliner, and my expectation when I started doing a little research for my appearance today was that I was going to find Cormier as like a minus 125, minus 150 favorite, but that wasn't the case. They've got most books have Anthony Johnson as like a minus 120, 125 favorite. And to be honest, I can't figure out why. He's had 3 very impressive wins over guys in their late 30s, Glover Teixeira, Ryan Bader, and Jimmy, I can't remember Jimmy's last name. I want to say Jimi Hendrix, but obviously that's not it. So, I don't really see anything that special that Johnson's done since he was choked out by Cormier a couple of years ago. And I was just, frankly, almost shocked that Cormier's not favored in that fight. So that's a fight I'm actually going to go put a wager on before that happens. And I was shocked by that. I just think Cormier obviously took care of him before. His only loss is a decision loss to John Jones, and that's not really anything to be ashamed of. And I just think he's the superior fighter with more ways to win the fight. And Johnson's got to knock him out to win, and I just don't see that happening.
45 seconds, because I'm getting up against it here. SportsBettingExperts.com. Why do I need to go there? And what separates you guys from every other gaming and forecasting website on the Internet?
For one thing, the quality of our information. Now, like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years in all phases of the game, and we're not out looking to take advantage of anyone. We provide good information, and I like to think very entertaining information. We're always doing new things, and they're always making improvements to the site on the technical end, and they give me free rein to do the content. And you're gonna find odds at our site, analysis at our site that you simply will not find anywhere else on the planet in terms of sports betting.
Jim, thanks so much for a few. I promise we'll do it again real soon. Really appreciated it. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. Looking forward to coming back.
You got it. Bye-bye now. Jim Murphy, SportsBettingExperts.com, joining us here on the Spano and Black Attack.